have, if they go into the psychedelic realms, is a sense that, that the society that we've constructed, that we have so much faith in as being kind of this permanent thing, is actually kind of provisional and transitional, and that even our way of being in time is a little bit of a construct. The idea of a kind of linear, historical, progressive time, that idea begins to peel away when you're in a psychedelic state. You could have more of a sense of kind of eternity or infinity, in the moment, as poets like William Blake talk about. So I think a lot of people through psychedelics get inklings into some other way that we could be in relationship to time and each other also, so I'd had that experience, personally, and I found that idea reflected and kind of interrogated in the works of the psychedelic visionary writer Terence McKenna, yes. Who'd written a number of books, including The Archaic Revival and The Invisible Landscape. And McKenna's career kind of started very dramatically in the early 70s, where he and his brother and some friends went down to the Amazon in search of some kind of magical psychedelic potion. They ended up having experiences with the mushrooms that were growing there. And McKenna claims that he had an experience where he stayed awake for an entire week and felt as if he was in direct communication during that time with a mushroom intelligence that was teaching him lessons and giving him kind of ideas. He's actually very, very cute about, he talks about it like it was like talking at him like a rabbi or something with all this information. And the mushroom claimed that it was actually like a galactic level consciousness that disseminated itself across the universe as spores on meteorites that would crash into planets like ours. Way to a mammal had developed a more sophisticated central nervous system that helped that mammal to develop language, vision, creativity, technology, and so on. And that we were on the cusp of, maybe making a deeper symbiotic relationship with this mushroom intelligence to reach a higher level of our evolution. And the mushroom also, according to McKenna, explained to him that our notion of time was a limited one, and that actually there were different kind of framings of time and consciousness, and the human being was reaching the end of one of these framings, and then moving into a different realization or awareness of space and time and consciousness. And so when McKenna left that experience, came back to the US, he got really obsessed with it, and he ended up kind of creating a whole thing about it, which he called the time wave. And his idea was that there was a kind of an increasing acceleration of novelty coming into the human reality, into human history, like faster and faster. So more technology, more creation, more creativity, more creation and also more destruction. That this was going to reach a crescendo, and somehow he mapped it all out and came up with December 2012 as when this process would reach its crescendo and shift into this next construct of consciousness. And now, when he wrote this book, The Invisible Landscape, and came up with this theory, he apparently didn't know about the long count calendar of the classical Maya. The classical Maya were a very sophisticated and fascinating, highly developed civilization that lived in the Yucatan between the 2nd century and the 9th century AD. I know maybe many people here have gone to like Palenque and Uxmal and Tikal and seen some of those monuments. And anyway, but around the 9th or 10th century AD, the classical Mayan civilization also mysteriously collapsed for reasons we don't know. And these cities were kind of just left behind in the jungles where they were largely obscured. And as archaeologists in the 20th century began to unearth these cities and learn how to read these hieroglyphs and these monuments and so on, they discovered that the Maya had a very sophisticated astronomy, a deep fascination with understanding these different cycles of time that were connected, correlated to these kind of galactic cycles, and that they had pointed towards December, in our calendar, December 21st, 2012, as the end of a long count cycle of 5,125 years. And while they had dates even millions of years in the past, and from their point, hundreds of years in the future. They didn't really have any dates that were beyond this December 21st, 2012 date. And so actually for this film I just completed, we interviewed Michael Coe, who's a Yale University emeritus professor of archaeologist of the Mayans, and he argues that this December 21st, 2012 date correlates with the Popol Vuh, which is the Mayan creation myth, where there are these different kind of world ages that there's incarnational cycles where humanity reaches a certain point, and then there's a shift. There's kind of a reckoning, with where things have gone wrong, where things have gone right, and then there's a new kind of evolutionary cycle. Now, Coe himself is not like a believer in this. He just thinks that that's what they're
saying.
What they're saying, exactly. So, but people like Terence McKenna, and then another psychedelically inspired kind of visionary writer, Jose Arguelles, also looked at the Mayan calendar and the Tzolk'in, which is this 13 by 20 matrix, which is a sacred day count of 260 that's still kept by the contemporary Maya. After the classical Mayan civilization collapsed, the long count calendar was no longer used. So the indigenous Maya, of whom there are millions from Guatemala and Mexico still today, don't use this long count calendar anymore, but they still follow the day count and the Popol Vuh. They don't have this idea of 2012. It's now been kind of reappropriated through like the New Age culture back into the contemporary Mayan culture. So it's kind of complicated. So I had a number of, and then the other thing for me was one concept that became very powerful to me was the idea of synchronicity, which Carl Jung wrote a famous essay about. The physicist F. David Pete has a book called The Synchronicity, the Bridge Between Mind and Matter, where he talks about how synchronicities, there are these kind of clicks. It's almost like when a synchronicity happens, it's almost like a key turning in a lock. And it can be as simple as you're thinking about some obscure book or obscure person, and suddenly they like pop up right away, or call you up after 10 years or something.
So how do you explain that phenomenon, since you've given a lot of thought to it?
I think that consciousness is not simply a brain-based phenomenon, that we're more like transceivers of a larger consciousness, which is more like the source of or ground of being, and that is one way to interpret a lot of the evidence that quantum physicists have discovered through things like the delayed choice experiment, John Archibald Wheeler's work, and so on. So that the psychic and the physical are actually entirely interrelated. They're not separate